The rain-soaked streets of Seattle glistened under the neon glow. But in my cramped clinic office, the world felt too small to contain the storm brewing inside me. My name is Ezra Nguyen, a beta doctor who'd spent years stitching up lives. Yet I couldn't mend the ache in my own chest. Tonight, Caleb Harper, the Alpha CEO who'd been my best friend since college, would barge in again, his heat driving him to my door, desperate and unraveling, only to vanish once his fever broke. I leaned back in my chair, the hum of the fluorescent lights buzzing like the tension in my veins. My desk was a battlefield of patient charts and coffee cups, but my eyes kept drifting to the clock. 2:17 a.m. He'd be here soon. Caleb always came when his suppressants failed, when his polished exterior cracked, revealing the raw, primal alpha beneath. I was his safe haven, the only one he trusted to see him like that vulnerable, stripped of his tailored suits and corporate armor. But each time he left, I was the one bleeding. The door burst open, and there he was, Caleb, 29, 6'2", blonde hair disheveled, blue eyes wild with need. His designer coat was soaked, clinging to his broad shoulders as he gripped the door frame, chest heaving. "Ezra," he rasped, voice thick with the heat that consumed him. Two couldn't wait. I stood, my heart lurching despite myself. "You never can," I said, keeping my tone steady, professional. But inside, I was drowning. Caleb wasn't just an alpha in heat. He was the man I'd loved in silence for a decade, the one who only saw me when biology demanded it. I gestured to the exam table. "Sit. Let me check your vitals." He staggered forward, his scent a mix of cedar and storm flooding the room, overwhelming my beta senses. I busied myself with the routine: pulse, temperature, blood pressure. His skin burned under my touch, and I hated how my fingers lingered, how my body betrayed me with every brush against his. "Why do you do this?" I muttered, unable to stop myself. "You've got the best doctors money can buy. Caleb, why me?" He grabbed my wrist, his grip firm but not cruel. "Because it's you," he said, eyes locking onto mine, raw and unguarded. "It's always been you." My breath caught. He'd said things like that before, in the haze of his heat, but they never lasted. I pulled away, turning to grab a syringe of emergency suppressants from the cabinet. "You don't mean that," I said, my voice tight. "You never do when you're clear-headed." Caleb's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. He never did. I injected the suppressant, watching the tension in his shoulders ease, his breathing slow. "You're staying here tonight," I said, more command than request. "You're in no shape to go back out there." He nodded, slumping onto the exam table, exhaustion replacing the fire in his eyes. I draped a blanket over him, my hands shaking. This was our cycle. He'd crash into my life. I'd patch him up, and he'd leave me to pick up the pieces of my heart. But tonight, something felt different. The air was heavier, the silence louder. I didn't know then that this visit would unravel everything we'd built and everything we'd hidden. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the clinic's blinds, painting stripes across Caleb's sleeping form. He looked peaceful, almost boyish, nothing like the untouchable CEO who graced magazine covers. I'd spent the night on a cot in the corner, unable to leave him alone. My phone buzzed another patient cancellation. Running a small clinic in Capitol Hill wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was tethered to Caleb's chaos. He stirred, blinking awake. "Ezra." His voice was softer now, the heat's edge gone. "Did I say anything stupid last night?" I forced a smile. "You always say stupid things during your heat." "Coffee." He chuckled, sitting up, his shirt rumpled. "You're too good to me, man." The words stung more than they should have. I handed him a mug, avoiding his gaze. "You need to get your suppressants adjusted. Caleb." This is the third time this year. It's not sustainable. I know, he said, staring into his coffee. I don't trust anyone else. Not with this. I wanted to scream that he didn't trust me either, not really. Not with his heart. Only his biology. Instead, I said, "You're a CEO? You've got resources. Find a specialist." He looked up, his blue eyes searching mine. "You're the only specialist I need." My chest tightened, but before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Marisol, my nurse, warning me about a protest forming outside the clinic. Anti-alpha sentiment had been rising in Seattle, fueled by fears of their dominance in society. My clinic, one of the few that openly treated alphas and omegas without judgment, had become a target. "Stay inside," Marisol said. "It's getting ugly." Caleb's expression darkened. "What's going on?" "Protesters," I said, grabbing my coat. "Stay here. I'll handle it." "Like hell you will," he snapped, standing. "I'm coming with you." I didn't have time to argue. Outside, a crowd of 20 or so people waved signs, "Alphas out of power," and betas deserve better. I recognized a few faces, locals who'd once thanked me for treating their kids. Now, they glared like I was the enemy. Caleb stood beside me, his presence commanding even in yesterday's clothes. "Dr. Gwen," a protester shouted, a woman in her 40s with a megaphone. "You're enabling alpha privilege. Why protect them?" I stepped forward, heart pounding. "I protect everyone," I said, voice steady. "Alphas, betas, omegas. This clinic doesn't discriminate." Caleb's hand brushed mine, a silent show of support, but it only fueled the crowd's anger. "He's one of them," another protester yelled, pointing at Caleb. "An alpha elite." The crowd surged, and I instinctively stepped in front of Caleb, shielding him. He grabbed my shoulder, pulling me back. "Ezra, don't," he growled, but I didn't budge. This was my clinic, my fight. A rock sailed through the air, shattering a window. Caleb yanked me down as glass rained around us. "Enough," he roared, his alpha voice cutting through the chaos. The crowd froze, stunned by the raw power in his tone. "You want to hate me? Fine. But Ezra's done nothing but help people. Leave him alone." The protesters hesitated, then dispersed as police sirens wailed in the distance. My heart raced, not from the danger, but from Caleb's words. He'd defended me, risked exposing himself. But as we retreated inside, I couldn't shake the question, was he protecting me? Or just his safe haven? Days passed, but the tension lingered. The clinic's broken window was boarded up, and Marisol worked overtime to keep patients calm. Caleb didn't leave my side, crashing on my couch instead of returning to his penthouse. He said it was to keep me safe, but I felt the weight of his presence, the unspoken pull between us. One night, over takeout in my tiny apartment above the clinic, he broke the silence. "Why do you keep doing this? Ezra, the clinic, the protests. Mui, don't you walk away." I set down my chopsticks, my chest tight. "Because I care," I said, voice raw. "About my patients. About you. Even if you only show up when you're falling apart." His eyes softened, and for a moment, I saw the Caleb from college, the one who'd stayed up all night helping me study, who'd laughed until we couldn't breathe. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I never meant to hurt you." "Then why do you?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. "You come to me when you're desperate, then disappear. I'm not your doctor, Caleb. I'm your friend. Or at least I thought I was." He reached across the table, his hand hovering over mine. "You're more than that," he said, voice low. "You always have been." My heart stopped. I wanted to believe him, but years of his absence screamed louder than his words. "Prove it," I said, standing. Because I can't keep being your lifeline when you don't even see me. He didn't follow me as I left the room, but his silence was answer enough. The next morning, he was gone, leaving only a note. I'll fix this. I promise. I crumpled it in my fist, unsure if I could trust Heimer, if I could survive another heartbreak. Weeks later, the clinic was back to its chaotic rhythm, but Caleb's absence left a void. I threw myself into work, ignoring the ache. Then, one evening, Marisol burst into my office, eyes wide. Turn on the news. I grabbed my phone, pulling up a live stream. Caleb stood at a podium, cameras flashing, his face calm but resolute. As an alpha and CEO of HarperTech, he said, I've benefited from privilege, but I've also seen the cost of division. That's why I'm funding a new initiative to support inclusive healthcare, starting with Dr. Ezra Nguyen's clinic in Capitol Hill. My jaw dropped. He was outing himself as an alpha on national TV, risking his reputation, his company, everything. The stream cut to a shot of my clinic. Patients streaming in, safe because of him. Tears stung my eyes as I realized what he'd done not just for me, but for everyone I served. That night, he showed up at my door. No heat, no desperation, just Caleb. I meant it, he said, stepping closer. You're not just my lifeline, Ezra. You're my home. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I kissed him, pouring a decade of longing into that moment. And he kissed me back, fierce and certain. The world outside could wait. For now, we were enough. Months later, the clinic thrived, bolstered by Caleb's initiative. We were still navigating our relationship, learning to trust each other beyond the heat and chaos. He wasn't perfect, and neither was I, but we were trying. Together, we faced the protests, the prejudice, the uncertainty, not as alpha and beta, but as two people who chose each other. Love, I learned, wasn't about fixing someone or being their cure. It was about standing side by side, even when the world tried to tear you apart. And as Caleb took my hand, leading me onto the rooftop garden where we'd first admitted our truth, I knew we'd keep fighting for each other, for our community, for a world where no one had to hide who they were.